From the beginning of the war in Ukraine, the Baltic states have persistently cautioned NATO and Europe regarding Russian aggression. As the conflict intensified, analysts and officials alike forecasted that Russia could potentially attack a NATO member, igniting a much larger conflict. That scenario nearly became a reality on September 19, 2025, when a trio of Russian MiG-31 fighter jets breached Estonian airspace above the Gulf of Finland, lingering for 12 exceptionally tense minutes. For Estonia, this was the final straw. What was their response? To purchase an astounding $4.7 billion in state-of-the-art weaponry from the United States, which included a precision missile system capable of striking deep within Russia's own territory. With this move, Estonia has effectively transformed its skies into a lethal snare for the ambitions of Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, the origins of this significant military enhancement began long before the present conflict. So, let's explore how Estonia gradually transformed itself into a stronghold against Russian aggression and what the implications are for the wider relationship between NATO and Russia. For many years, the Baltic nations depended exclusively on NATO's Baltic air policing mission for their air defense. Because Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania do not have their own fighter jets, NATO allies would take turns deploying to patrol their airspaces. This arrangement started in 2004, the year the Baltic states became NATO members, and for the next 20 years, it served as their sole defense against Russian aircraft. Things changed in 2023. That September, Estonia and Latvia inked a landmark $400 million, $464 million deal with German defense firm Diehl Defense for the Iris-T SLM medium-range air defense system. This marked the biggest defense purchase in Estonia's entire history. Initial deliveries came in late 2024, and by the middle of 2025, Estonia's new air defense wing was set to reach full operational capability. The nation went from having no defensive systems to possessing one of the world's most thorough designs in a time frame of just 18 months. The Iris-T SLM system is itself a piece of advanced technology, already rigorously tested against Russian threats in one of the only battlegrounds capable of yielding vast amounts of data, Ukraine. Starting in late 2022, Ukrainian forces have utilized Iris-T systems to protect against Russian missile assaults, with reports indicating the batteries have an almost perfect success rate. According to Helmut Rauch, the CEO of Diehl Defense, by mid-2024, Ukrainian Iris-T systems had secured more than 240 confirmed kills against Russian drones, cruise missiles, and aircraft. During a documented incident in July 2025, a lone Iris-T battery eliminated 8 Russian cruise missiles in under 30 seconds, deploying precisely one missile for each target with flawless accuracy. The system's capabilities are clearly astounding. Every Iris-T SLM battery is able to engage targets as far as 25 miles away and at heights of up to 13 miles. These missiles employ sophisticated infrared imaging guidance, which makes them exceedingly hard to jam or fool with countermeasures. This is because, in contrast to radar-guided systems which electronic warfare can blind, Iris-T missiles visualize their targets using infrared seekers initially created for air-to-air engagements. It is significantly more challenging to spoof the infrared spectrum through conventional methods, since self-propelled munitions and aircraft have engines that inherently emit heat. A few exceptions exist, such as stealth aircraft and unpowered glide bombs. Russia lacks a large supply of the former because of other defense systems, while the latter are more vulnerable to electronic interference and possess relatively poor accuracy from the start. What makes the Iris-T system genuinely dangerous is its capacity to engage several targets at once irrespective of their type. This signifies that it is capable of targeting not only the aircraft, but also the drones or munitions it launches. When you factor in Estonia's comparatively small territory, just a few batteries could conceivably offer coverage for the whole country. Estonia acquired 3 Iris-T SLM batteries, complete with launchers, radars, missiles, and fire control centers. The radars accompanying these batteries are usually the German-manufactured TRML-4D, offering 360-degree coverage and the ability to track more than 1,500 targets at the same time, at distances beyond 150 miles. To put that in context, that is approximately the distance from Tallinn, the nation's capital, to its other towns and cities. In theory, therefore, a radar positioned near Tallinn could spot a Russian intrusion into any portion of the airspace directly above its land. But Estonia's efforts don't end there. The Estonian Center for Defense Investments revealed plans in April 2025 to acquire a long-range ballistic missile defense system, carrying an estimated cost of $1 billion or $1.1 billion. On their shopping list are systems like the American Patriot, Israel's David Sling, and the Franco-Italian SAMP-T. The common feature of all these systems is their specific design to intercept the type of ballistic missiles that Russia frequently uses for threats. This is crucial given Estonia's proximity to Russian military bases. For instance, the Russian town of Luga, home to military installations, is located only 60 miles from Estonia's border. An Iskander-M ballistic missile from Russia, launched from Luga, could hit Tallinn in a mere 4 minutes due to its breakneck top speed of 5,000 miles per hour and its powerful acceleration. This would give Estonia just 4 minutes to detect, track, and neutralize an approaching ballistic missile threat. Naturally, threats from other sources like drones or planes are far more probable, and Estonia's geography doesn't help, as the nation is only a few hundred miles across in any direction. This is precisely why a layered air defense network capable of dealing with each of these threats is essential for Estonia. This all came to a head in October 2025, when Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur affirmed that Estonia was set to drastically increase its arms acquisitions from the U.S., elevating its procurement ceiling from $500 million to an incredible $4.7 billion. To top it off, Congress had already received notification and given its approval for the expanded exports to a nation situated practically on Russia's border, offering a perfect spot for staging either a defensive barricade or an invasion. The list of purchased items looks like a dream for any military strategist worried about Russian aggression. Estonia intends to double its high-mobility artillery rocket systems, HIMARS, from 6 to 12, expand its Army Tactical Missile System, ATACMS inventory from 18 to 200, and procure the new Precision Strike Missile, PRSM system, which is still in development. Consider the strategic implications of this. The ATACMS missiles possess a range of approximately 200 miles, sufficient to strike deep inside Russian territory from the Estonian border. The newer PRSM missiles, which are not yet fully developed, are anticipated to offer even longer range and better precision, possibly exceeding 315 miles. For Estonia's offensive capabilities, these represent significant upgrades. Paired with its prior defensive investments, Estonia is now a formidable opponent for Russian forces, who would need to commit excessive amounts of equipment and manpower to meet the challenge. The HIMARS system has achieved legendary status in Ukraine, where it has been employed to eliminate Russian command posts, ammunition depots, and logistics centers far behind the front lines. Every launcher can unleash 6 rockets in quick succession and then move before counter-battery fire can respond. This shoot-and-scoot strategy has been shown to be devastatingly effective, and it's a major lesson in modern tactical developments that Western analysts have learned from the Ukrainian experience. The ATAC-MS elevates this concept to a whole new plane. Possessing a range of 190 miles, ATAC-MS is capable of hitting targets throughout northwestern Russia from inside Estonian territory. The missile is specifically engineered to eliminate parked aircraft, anti-air batteries, munitions storage sites, and even fortified targets. This versatility stems from intrinsic design differences in the missile and its warhead. The initial M39 design was filled with hundreds of bomblets that would essentially tear through soft targets and unfortified structures with shrapnel, causing widespread destruction. With a failure rate of around 2%, the great majority of these bomblets would detonate as intended, destroying or severely damaging their targets. Following this was the unitary design, featuring a single, large 500-pound warhead designed to use its kinetic force to penetrate outer armor, and then detonate to inflict maximum damage on buildings, military vehicles, and other reinforced targets. The surprising part is that this proximity to Russia could in fact be an advantage for Estonia. St. Petersburg, a major military center and Russia's second-largest city, serves as a critical lifeline for the country's northwest, connecting to the Kola Peninsula, where nuclear weapons and other key military facilities are likely located. And it's situated just 100 miles from the Estonian border. Russian military installations in the Kaliningrad exclave are also comfortably within range, although they face an arguably greater threat from neighboring military giants like Germany and Poland. And Estonia's ambitions don't stop with ATACMS. The next-generation system in development promises even more range, enhanced accuracy, and the capability to strike moving targets. Under optimal conditions, these missiles could strike targets over 500 kilometers away, posing a direct threat to Russia's population centers. And they achieve this using supersonic missiles, which are consequently much harder to detect and intercept before impact. Additionally, Estonia is procuring counter-rocket, artillery, and mortar (CRAM) systems, which are engineered to find and eliminate incoming short-range threats like rockets, mortar rounds, and artillery shells. Such systems could represent the last nail in the coffin for any potential Russian invasion, by annihilating incoming munitions in the final moments of their trajectory. Indeed, Ukraine has its own variants of short-range defensive systems to combat Russian artillery barrages, which were arguably a primary method Russia used to try and force Ukraine's submission. CRAMs are engineered to shield high-value assets like air bases, command posts, and ammunition depots, and they are poised to be integrated into the planned Baltic defense line that will run from Estonia down to Lithuania. With over 1,000 bunkers, trenches, and resupply routes being constructed across the three Baltic nations, it would serve as the ultimate defiance to Russian aggression in the area. When you add in the anti-air defenses, Russia is left with no viable targets to strike within Estonia. Meanwhile, Estonia can retaliate by either eliminating advancing forces or launching a long-range barrage to check Russia's offensive actions. To accomplish this ambitious objective of repelling a nation with immense military-industrial capacity, Estonia is not cutting any corners financially. Estonian Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur revealed a $10 billion, $11.6 billion defense investment plan in July 2025, which will span from 2026 to 2029. To provide some context, Estonia's total GDP is around $38 billion or $44 billion. This signifies that the nation is dedicating more than a quarter of its present economic output to its defense over a 4-year period. Broken down annually, this amount is significantly higher than the 5% military spending target suggested by Trump, a figure NATO has also recently endorsed. But Estonia is only a single member of the world's largest military defense pact. NATO as a whole spends more on military budgeting and investment than the rest of the globe put together, even when considering that most of its members barely met the 2% of GDP target until recently. As President Donald Trump urges an increase to that figure, and other countries seek a compromise that might see the military budgets of nations like Germany, France, the UK, and Italy climb to 3.5% of their GDP, NATO could receive a substantial cash injection for procurement and research. For decades prior, NATO has labored diligently to integrate its member states into a cohesive network that facilitates real-time intelligence sharing and enables the rapid deployment of any member's military to protect its allies. Additionally, in February 2025, NATO initiated 2 new multinational programs centered on air defense. A coalition of 15 allies, Estonia among them, pledged to create more effective solutions for low-flying aerial threats operating below 500 feet. The same group of nations also started a program for passive air surveillance, using methods like noise detection to spot threats that conventional radar cannot. Let's think about the strategic implications. A Russian jet nearing Estonian airspace will now encounter several layers of engagement and detection. To begin, long-range radar systems tied into NATO's integrated air defense system can spot aircraft from hundreds of miles out. The Estonian radar network, which is coordinated via the Baltic Air Surveillance Network's regional center in Lithuania, sends live tracking information to NATO's Combined Air Operations Center located in Uedam, Germany. Next, as the aircraft gets closer to Estonian airspace, IRIS-T radar systems will acquire a lock on it from distances over 75 miles, following its every maneuver. Then, should the aircraft breach Estonian airspace, NATO fighters will be scrambled to intercept. These would probably be fifth-generation F-35s or high-end fourth-generation jets like the Swedish Gripen, all outfitted with sophisticated electronic warfare capabilities and beyond visual range missiles. This capability is light years beyond what Ukraine has been employing to successfully protect itself and even launch offensive attacks on occupied areas or within Russia proper. While the F-16s and Mirage 2000s that Ukraine got were fitted with midlife upgrades, the fundamental airframe is still a last-generation aircraft designed back in the 70s and 80s. Fourth, in the event of an escalation, IRIS-T SLM batteries can engage targets from up to 25 miles out with almost perfect precision. Russian pilots would have only seconds to respond before supersonic, infrared-guided missiles cover the distance. Fifth, CRAM systems offer point defense against any retaliatory rocket or artillery strikes from Russia. And finally, there's the sixth layer, revitalized offensive power. Estonia will now probably gain the ability to hit Russian forces as they are still gathering on their side of the border. This makes ammunition dumps, command centers, air bases, railway hubs, and logistics centers all susceptible to Estonian attacks before an invasion can even start. Considering that recent projections for a Russian invasion of NATO have been pushed back from 2025 to 2027 and now to 2029, the prior budget increase directly benefits Estonia, giving it enough offensive and defensive might to possibly eliminate the chance of a Russian attack on NATO altogether. To launch an invasion of Estonia, Russia would have to gather troops and equipment close to the border, set up forward operating bases, build up stockpiles of fuel and ammunition, and manage intricate logistics. Every one of these preparations would be detectable by NATO's surveillance, and each one would be a target for Estonia's ATACMS or PRSMs. This puts Russia in an unsolvable predicament. Should it gather its forces for an invasion, those forces become vulnerable before the attack even starts. If it attempts a surprise assault without adequate preparation, it won't have the logistical support needed for a prolonged operation. Furthermore, Russia probably cannot attack Estonia safely without first taking out its air defenses, yet it cannot neutralize those defenses without bringing its forces into the range of Estonian missile strikes. No matter the choice, the price of aggression rises steeply. For the people of Estonia and the other Baltic nations, repelling Russia is no ordinary conflict. Decades in the past, these countries were forcefully absorbed into the Soviet Union. For a great number of Estonians, especially those old enough to recall the Soviet era, the danger of Russian aggression is a tangible, lived reality. This explains why Estonia allocates a larger percentage of its GDP to defense than nearly any other NATO country. It's the reason half the men born each year are now anticipated to perform military service, and why middle-aged parents are enlisting in the Defense League to train as soldiers. It also clarifies the staggering figures associated with Estonia's procurements and investments relative to its small population. For a small country bordering Russia, ensuring security requires perpetual vigilance, significant investment, and the readiness to act decisively despite limited resources. Estonia is sending an unambiguous message. If you attack, you will pay a price that makes the conflict in Ukraine seem mild in comparison. And to compound Russia's problems, Estonia is not standing alone. The incident on September 19th showed that NATO's collective defense pledge is more than just words. As Russian aircraft breached Estonian airspace, Italian fighters scrambled to respond. Aircraft from Sweden and Finland also participated in the interception. The whole operation was coordinated in real time by NATO's command structure. Had the Russian jets lingered any longer, they could have been escorted to a NATO airbase nearby, and the situation could have spiraled out of control. Putin is aware of this, which is why Russia confines itself to gray zone strategies that stop just short of activating Article 5. An airspace breach lasting 12 minutes is a borderline act of aggression that no sane leader would start a war over. It would simply provide Russia with more material for its relentless propaganda, allowing it to claim it was attacked while conducting harmless exercises in its own airspace. The irony is that Putin's invasion of Ukraine was partly intended to halt NATO's expansion and showcase Russian military strength. Instead, The conflict has resulted in the biggest NATO expansion in decades, unparalleled rises in European defense budgets, and the evolution of the Baltic states from exposed frontline countries into powerful defensive strongholds. Back in 2001, as the Baltic nations were on the path to NATO membership, Putin's response was surprisingly subdued. In a radio interview at the time, he offered no negative comments about the development, and even seemed to praise the states for prioritizing their security. This wasn't due to any affection for NATO on Putin's part, but because Russia was still in economic recovery and unprepared to confront the West. At that time, Putin relied on the West to purchase Russian oil and gas, and if that required letting go of the nations that were most vocal and earliest in their efforts to break away from the Soviet Union, then so be it. But jump ahead to 2025, and Putin is confronting a completely different set of circumstances. Sweden and Finland have also become members of the alliance. Finland lost a significant piece of territory to the Soviet Union in World War II, while Sweden is well known for its attempts to stay neutral during that conflict. The addition of these two countries doubled the length of NATO's border with Russia, further limiting Russia's choices for a land invasion, as its ports and nuclear arsenals are now even more accessible. And Ukraine, in spite of terrible losses, has battled Russian forces to a stalemate, inflicting devastating casualties and equipment losses along the way. Now, every provocation from Russia serves as a justification for more NATO reinforcement. The $10 billion, $11 billion defense investment by Estonia would have been politically unfeasible 5 years ago. Today, it is viewed as both necessary and wise. Germany is debating the removal of some of its spending caps and even collaborating with France and Britain to expand Europe's own nuclear deterrent capabilities to cover the whole continent. This implies the airspace violation in September was a probe. Russia was trying to gauge how fast NATO would react, how well coordinated the response would be, and if any vulnerabilities could be exploited. They received their answer. NATO's response was in minutes, the coordination was perfect, and no gaps were found. However, Russia also received a message it likely did not anticipate: that a small country of 1.3 million people will soon possess some of the most advanced offensive and defensive weapon systems available. Russia's industry is still recuperating from the current war, making it unlikely to launch a significant offensive for several years. This provides Estonia with the time it needs to intensify its preparations and persuade other NATO members to do the same. Thank you for watching. For more information on the extensive defense preparations in the Baltics, you can view our video on the Baltic defense line. And to keep up with how European security developments and the war in Ukraine are transforming global geopolitics, please subscribe to Warzone Party for daily content.